All right, I'll be going over number 9 and 10 from the chapter 9 test. So for number 9a, it's going to be solving for the inverse function of this function. This is 2x plus 7, so I want to go ahead and solve for the inverse function. This method right here is a method that I love. If I knew this when I was in high school, I would have done great at inverse functions every single time. So step 1 is to write y equals instead of that. Step 2 is to actually switch. So it says x equals. And that just switches the letters. Only the letters change. So now what I want to do is do some inverse operations. To make y by itself, my goal is to get rid of the 7. So I'll have to subtract 7. And then I will have x minus 7 equals 2y. Finally, I want to get rid of that 2, so I'll divide by 2. That divides the whole thing by 2, and now that I have y alone, I know that I'm done. My final answer is f inverse of x equals minus 7 all divided by 2. X minus 7 all divided by 2. Okay, now let's do the same process for letter B. Y equals x squared minus 18. We want to find the inverse of that, so I'll use the same method that I did before of switching the x's with the y. So that gives me x equals y squared minus 18. Okay, again, the same goal. I want it to have the y alone or isolated, so I must get rid of the stuff all around y. So my first step is to get rid of the 18, the minus 18. So I'll add that to the left side, giving me x plus 18 equals y squared. Okay, I still don't have y alone. I want to get rid of that square symbol. So to do that, I will have to do the opposite of square, which is square root. Remember, I have to do that to the entire left side. That cancels out the square, and I'm done. F inverse of x equals the square root of x plus 18, all under the square root sign. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll go over number 10 and the hints that might be helpful. There's a few hints that I'm going to give during this video, so please listen as close as you can. A lot of what? A lot of hints. So again, be ready for that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is recognize that this thing is in standard form. The way it is tells me that my y-intercept is at the end. So already I should be saying, look, my y-intercept is 9. So 0, comma 9. 0, comma 9. And we're pretty much set. Next up, I know that if I'm actually going to be in factored form tells me what the x-intercepts are. So if I go ahead and factor this, I will get my intercepts. So I will go ahead and do that. X squared minus 10x plus 9. If I set that to equal to 0, that's going to actually give me, if I set y equal to 0, or f of x, if I set y equal to 0, that's going to give me my y-intercepts. So I'm going to go ahead and factor this. Now, what actually multiplies to 9? Multiplies to 9 and adds to negative 10. Multiplies to 9 and adds to negative 10. So I got to find those two numbers, right? So if I go ahead and write this as x and x, and I will get my factored form of, what is it? Let's see. Negative 9 and negative 1. Is that it? Let's see. Multiplies to get that. Yep. And adds to get that. Yeah, so that's correct. So I will have x minus 9 and x minus 1. This is the factored form. So those are not my x-intercepts. It's not -9, -1. My x-intercepts are going to be when I apply the zero product property. So after I apply the zero product property, I will get my two answers, x equals 9 and x equals 1. So interestingly enough, I will have my x-intercepts at 1, 0 and 9, 0. Finally, my goal is to actually now solve for the vertex. So the vertex, this doesn't tell me the vertex. This doesn't tell me the vertex. If I actually go into vertex form, I will be able to find out what the vertex is. So we can do that. There's also another way of doing this. So what I'm going to actually do right now is complete the square first. So I'm going to show going into graphing or vertex form by completing the square. So let's see what that looks like. The formula is b over 2 squared. So if I take my original equation here, x squared minus 10x plus 9. If I set that equal to 0, that's totally fine. What I will do is I will try to complete the square using the b term right there. Or I'll use pink. Why not? Because I used pink before. The b term is -10, so I will have to complete the square with that. So what I will do is I will first, this is just the way I like to do it. I will subtract 9 to the right side. That gives me x squared minus 10x plus, I'll add a box to complete the square. And now I will add a number so that it becomes a perfect square. So can you tell me what half of, well, half, right, half of -10, that's 5, or -5. And then square it. What do we get? 5 squared. 5 times 5 is 25. So I will get a perfect square, x minus 5 squared, equals, and what does this add up to? -9 plus 25. Let's see. -9 plus 25.
It's 16.
16. Okay, so now that's not in vertex form. I'm almost there. I just have to move that number back. So if I go ahead and take the 16 and finally just move it back, I will get my vertex form. Now I'm going to write this over here. I will get x minus 5 squared equals, oh, forgot that. X minus 5 squared, subtract 16, I will get minus 16. And I'm going to go ahead and write that as y equals. Move this over. That we're going to get y equals this. So remember, for the vertex h comma k, I have to switch the sign if it's in parentheses. So the -5 becomes +5, and then the -16 stays the same. So -16 becomes, or stays as -16. So right now I can go ahead and say I'm done, but I do want to show you one final trick. The final trick is some people have been wondering, like, yo, isn't this the y-intercept as well? Like, is the y-intercept going to be 9 or is it going to be -16? So that's a good question to have. Is the y-intercept, is it going to be 9 or is it going to be -16? So let's see. Well, y-intercept is always going to be 0, comma something, right? So we're going to go ahead and call this the x value. So if I actually plug in 0 for my x, let's try it out. 0 minus 5 squared, right? What's 0 minus 5? Again, what are we doing? We're finding the y-intercept just by plugging in 0, right? If I plugged in 0 over here, 0 squared minus 10 times 0 plus 9, we'll get the y-intercept is 9, right? But what if I plug in 0 into this equation? We'll get negative 5 squared minus 16. Now, what's negative 5 squared? 25 minus 16?
It's 9.
9. So the answer of 0, comma 9 works for this formula or this equation in graphing form, but it also works for this equation in standard form. So if you just simply plug in 0, you will be able to get your answer for the y-intercept. Okay?